Welcome to Daily News Simplified, an answer to what, why, and how of newspaper reading. Today, we are going to discuss important issues appearing in the New Delhi edition of the Hindu newspaper dated 21st August 2018. Let's begin. The first news appears on page number 8 in the editorial section. It says, Stay with RCEP. India must not take the easiest way out on the trade deal and walk out of talks. Now, this news on RCEP becomes important under GS paper 2, specifically under international relations. And a question on RCEP was also asked in the year 2018 prelims examination. So, this news on RCEP becomes important from a UPSC point of view. First of all, let us understand certain basics about RCEP. It says RCEP, that is Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, is an agreement currently being negotiated between ASEAN plus 6 countries, which includes the 10 ASEAN countries and 6 other countries, that is 6 other trading partners, which includes Australia, China, India, Japan, New Zealand, as well as South Korea. The RCEP negotiations was also envisioned as being led by ASEAN and would be based upon the vision of ASEAN centrality. So, this RCEP vision is based on the concept of ASEAN centrality. It then says the agreement covers goods, services, investment, competition, intellectual property, economic, as well as technical cooperation, e commerce, and law, and is intended to be a free trade agreement. So, this RCEP is a free trade agreement. It then says the first RCEP summit was held in 2017, and this is meant to build upon the existing ASEAN plus 1 FTA, that is free trade agreement, wherein ASEAN has existing FTA agreements with other 6 members. So this editorial highlights India's contention in RCEP negotiations, where India has negotiated for liberalization of services sector in which it has a comparative advantage. However, some of the developed countries such as Australia and Singapore are unwilling to accommodate India's demand to liberalize their services. Under the services, it says that countries such as Australia and New Zealand are reluctant towards opening their services market to other countries such as India that would provide cheaper competitive edge to their domestic players. So countries such as Australia, New Zealand, even Singapore is unwilling to accommodate India's demand with respect to liberalizing of the services sector. As far as the manufacturing is concerned, it says that India has been reluctant for liberalization in manufacturing sector in which China and other member nations have a comparative advantage. So in the manufacturing sector, India is reluctant with respect to liberalizing the manufacturing sector, considering that China and other countries have certain comparative advantage with respect to the manufacturing sector. And in this aspect, India also thinks that domestic players in price competitive sectors such as in electronics in which China and South Korea have an edge will also impact India's manufacturing sector. So in this aspect, India is reluctant to liberalize its manufacturing sector. So on one aspect, other countries are reluctant to liberalize their services sector, whereas India is reluctant to liberalize its manufacturing sector. So in this aspect, negotiations becomes important, and it is where the editorial mentions that India should not walk away from the RCEP negotiations. Now a similar question had appeared in 2018 prelims examination. Let's go through the question. The question asked in the year 2018 prelims was, consider the following countries: Australia, Canada, China, India, Japan, USA. Which of the above are among the free trade partners of ASEAN? Now to answer this question, let us again go back to whatever we have discussed right now. It says that RCEP is an agreement currently being negotiated between ASEAN plus 6 countries, and these plus 6 countries are Australia, China, India, Japan, New Zealand, and South Korea. And this was the question which was asked in the 2018 prelims examination, since a summit had taken place in 2017. So after going through the list, we know that Canada and USA are not a part of this free trade partners of ASEAN, and Australia, China, India, and Japan, as per this question, is the correct answer. So in this 1, 3, 4 and 5, that is C is our correct answer. So we see This editorial on RCEP becomes extremely important from a UPSC point of view. With this, let's move on to the next news. The next news appears on page number 9. The news reads, what Swachh Bharat Abhiyaan ignores. The profession of waste removal needs to be made caste neutral through adoption of technologies. So this particular article is with respect to a holistic approach towards waste management. And this waste management becomes a part of GS paper 1 as well as GS paper 3. Under paper 1, it falls under issues relating to poverty and developmental issues, urbanization, their problems as well as their remedies, where waste is one of the greatest problem of urbanization in the modern time. Further, under GS paper 3, it falls specifically under conservation, environmental pollution and degradation, and also environmental impact assessment. So in this aspect, let's understand what this article has to say on a holistic approach towards waste management in India. The article mentions that Swachh Bharat Abhiyaan aimed to inspire voluntary cleanings of public place through people's participation. And this aspect, Swachh Bharat Abhiyaan promoted the concept of a clean society. And this promotion of a clean society effectively led to the hiring of contractual laborers by municipalities across India. And this hiring of contractual laborers by municipalities mostly led to the hiring of scavengers who were ultimately forced into their profession because of their caste. So, as per the author, this mindset needs to be removed by adoption of technology. The Western civilization introduced technology to systematically remove waste. In this aspect, it's important to know that the Great Stink in London in the year 1858 made them realize that it was necessary to adopt a holistic approach towards sewage treatment. And this realization became a part of London water infrastructure. And this London water infrastructure was used to remove filth and treat waste from the river Thames in London. So it is in this aspect that Swachh Bharat Abhiyaan needs to treat waste management more holistically. And the Swachh Bharat Abhiyaan must address the reworking of underground sewerage system, as many laborers have died while cleaning the jammed manholes. The author has highlighted another important fact that as per a reply by Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment in Lok Sabha, it has been noted that over 300 of deaths which have occurred mostly belong to particular caste group. So as per the author, in India, waste removal has a stigma of caste, and waste remover is not considered as a professional like in the Western civilization. Another problem with respect to waste is that of waste segregation and waste disposal. As in India, the general practice is that after a garbage is collected from a household, it is then segregated at the composting site. Manual segregation of waste at the site of waste dumping also compromises the health of such workers. So, effectively, in this article, the author wants to highlight that the government must address the issue of waste management more holistically. Further, stigma attached to scavengers must be critically addressed by the government. And the government must introduce the use of technology in waste management, including waste segregation, as introduction of technology in waste management will make the work caste neutral. So this article on introduction of technology for Swachh Bharat Abhiyaan becomes extremely important from our exam point of view. With this, let's move on to the next news. The next news appears on page number 8. The news reads, a brief history of Rupee. Now, in this particular news, certain information regarding history of Rupee as well as Crips Mission has been mentioned. So from our exam point of view, specifically prelims, let's understand certain key facts with respect to Indian Rupee and certain important aspects regarding the Crips Mission. This paper gets covered under GS paper 1 under Indian history and culture, specifically under the freedom struggle, its various stages and important contributions from different parts of the country. This article has made historical comparisons of the value of rupee and has suggested that India's political and monetary independence were two separate phenomena. So in this aspect, a question has also been asked with respect to Crips Mission, which has been mentioned in this article. Let's go through that question. The question was asked in the year 2016. The question read, the plan of Sir Stafford Cripps envisaged that after the Second World War, 4 options were given and we have to choose one correct option. The options were India should be granted complete independence, India should be partitioned into two before granting independence, India should be made a republic with the condition that she will join the Commonwealth and the India should be given dominion status. So before answering this question, let's go through certain important aspects mentioned in this article as well as key informations about Crips Mission. So this article has mentioned that rupee was freely convertible till the year 1939. However, after war declared on Germany by Britain and France in the year 1939, the British government made rupee inconvertible. Now, the convertibility of the rupee here means the ability to convert Indian currency into any other currency, and also the ability of other currencies to get converted into Indian currency. And this conversion had to take place at the prevailing exchange rate. And this conversion had to take place at the prevailing exchange rate. Another key information mentioned in the article from our prelims point of view is that till 1st July 1948, the Reserve Bank of India continued as the central bank for the government of Pakistan. So this becomes a key information from our prelims point of view. So in this aspect of conversion of rupee in 1939, the British government had then made Indian rupee inconvertible. So it meant that transferring money outside the sterling area required permission from the British government. So these are some of the important aspects which you must remember from a prelims point of view. Further, this article also mentions about Crips Mission. So let's go through some of the important provision of Crips Mission and then we'll try to attempt the question which was asked in the year 2016. It says that the Crips Mission was sent by the British government in March 1942 to India with key objective to secure Indian cooperation and support for British war efforts. It further says that it was headed by Sir Stafford Cripps and this mission sought to negotiate an agreement with Indian leaders. And the key proposal of this Crips mission was that India should be given a dominion status. And this was for the first time that Britishers acknowledged India's dominion status. So effectively, Crips mission offered dominion status to India, which was eventually rejected by all the participants in Indian national freedom movement. It also promised that immediately after the war, steps would be taken to set up an elected body charged with the task of making the constitution. So it also promised an elected body for making a constitution and also said that provisions will be made so that Indian states could participate in the framing of the constitution. It further says that the mission, which was a move to appease the Congress, Muslim League and Indian states at the same time, was rejected by all of them together, including the Sikhs, Hindu Mahasabha, Dalits as well as the depressed classes also rejected this proposal of Sir Stafford Cripps for a dominion status. So this concept of dominion status as proposed by Crips Mission was rejected. So in this aspect, let's also go through the reasons for the failure of the Crips Mission. It says it failed because Congress objected to the offer of dominion status instead of a provision for complete independence. So Congress wanted complete independence and instead they were getting this dominion status which was not accepted to the Congress at that point of time. Further, absence of any plan for immediate transfer of power and absence of any real share in defense was another reason. Further, the Muslim League criticized the idea of a single Indian Union. The Hindu Mahasabha also criticized the basis of a right to secede. And in this, even the depressed classes thought that partition would leave them at the mercy of caste Hindus. And the Sikhs objected as they thought that a partition will take away the entire region of Punjab from them. So these were the various reasons why different participants in the Indian national freedom movement rejected the proposal of Sir Stafford Cripps. So now after understanding the basics about Crips Mission, let's go through the question asked in the year 2016. So the question was the plan of Sir Stafford Cripps envisaged that after the Second World War. Here we have gone through the option and the correct option here is option D, that India should be given a dominion status. So this proposal of dominion status by Sir Stafford Cripps was rejected. So this news becomes important from historical point of view and also with respect to certain basic facts about the Indian rupee. With this, let's move on to the next news. The next news appears on page number 13. The news reads, Credit Registry, RBI Act may need tweak. Setting up the crucial database of public credit information may pose legal issues, says RBI's Acharya. Now this topic of credit registry forms a part of GS paper 3, specifically under Indian economy and issues relating to planning, mobilization, resources, growth, development and employment. and also inclusive growth and issues arising from it. So in this news, the RBI Deputy Governor Viral Acharya has stated that the Reserve Bank of India Act 1934 may need to be amended to facilitate the setting of Public Credit Registry or PCR. So we see that in order to set up a PCR, that is a Public Credit Registry, the Reserve Bank of India Act needs to be amended. And this decision of RBI to set up Public Credit Registry is based on the recommendations of a high-level task force which was headed by Yashwant M. Diosthali. So this information becomes very important from a prelims point of view. That Yashwant M. Diosthali headed a task force to set up a Public Credit Registry. So in this aspect, let's learn certain things about credit information. Now, credit information is essentially certain detailed information of a borrower's past loan. And this information becomes important for the development of an efficient credit market. It says that in the absence of a detailed and complete credit data, lenders cannot distinguish between different kinds of borrowers, that is, good borrower, bad borrower, etc. So we see that it becomes important to differentiate between different kinds of borrowers. And here kinds of borrowers refers to those people who are either repaying their loan in time or such people who are not able to repay their loan in due time. So this differentiation of kinds of borrowers leads to a suboptimum credit market. It says that where lenders overcharge low risk borrowers and undercharge high risk borrowers. So such people who are repaying their loan in time can be considered as low risk borrowers. And from such low risk borrowers, generally low interest should be charged. But right now from such low risk borrowers are charged higher interest. Whereas those people who are not able to repay their loan in due time should be considered as high risk borrowers. And these high risk borrowers are charged a lower rate of interest. So this phenomena of charging higher interest rate from low risk borrowers and charging lower interest rate from high risk borrowers is known as adverse selection. So if we have a proper credit rating information, then such adverse selection will not take place. So effectively we can say a proper credit information will further prevent cases of adverse selection. So in this aspect, let's understand certain problems with credit information in India. It says that at present, credit information is spread over multiple agencies and information on borrowings from banks, NBFCs, market, etc. is not available through a single repository. So we do not have any single repository or a single window from where proper credit information can be availed. So in this aspect, the RBI had set up a central repository of information on large credits in the year 2014-15, where all the banks were required to furnish credit information to this institution on all their borrowers who had an aggregate exposure of rupees 5 crore and above. But apart from CRILC, there are other private credit bureaus including CIBIL, Equifax, Experian, CRIF Highmark, etc. Further, it says that in the loan approval process, apart from pure credit history, other ancillary information is also critically important to ascertain total indebtedness of a borrower. And these ancillary information can be like corporate balance sheet information, tax information, utility bill payments, information on legal proceedings, etc. Thus, ancillary credit information may not get reported currently as part of the credit information repository mechanism. So there is a need to report these ancillary financial information with respect to a borrower. Further, let's also find the benefit of this PCR, that is Public Credit Registry. It says that with a low credit to GDP ratio, the country is still underpenetrated financially, and the proposed registry can help the system move towards more equitable and timely access to credit. Here, 55.7% credit to GDP ratio refers to, suppose the GDP of a country is rupees 100, then out of these rupees 100, rupees 55.7 is raised through loan. And this credit to GDP ratio of around 55.7 is considered lower and also reflects a low financial penetration in the Indian market. So it says that a PCR will help the system move towards more equitable and timely access to credit. Further benefits can be to reduce the reporting burden on credit institutions. As already mentioned, a proper credit information will address the issue of adverse selection. It means that different kinds of borrowers will be identified and these high risk or low risk borrowers will be provided loan on different interest rates. Further, it says that it will also improve the ease of doing business, as ease of credit is one of the 10 parameters in the World Bank's Ease of Doing Business Index. Now, the question was also asked on ease of doing business in UPSC prelims examination. Further, it says that a PCR will help in effective supervision and will help the lenders to take timely corrective steps. So, these are some of the important benefits of a public credit registry. However, there are certain legal challenges with respect to constituting a public credit registry. It says that the RBI Act, as of now, does not empower the central bank to regulate the public credit registry, as it does not fall within the definition of a financial institution. So, there are certain legal challenges specifically with respect to the RBI Act. And in this aspect, the RBI Act needs amendment to regulate the public credit registry. Further, this PCR will require consent or approval from different sources of information sharing. This will require amending legislations separately, allowing an exemption to sharing information. So we see there are certain legal challenges as well with respect to constitution of this public credit registry. So after going through this analysis on public credit registry, let's go through two questions asked by UPSC in prelims examination. The question asked in the year 2016 was with respect to India's ranking in the ease of doing business. Now we know that the correct answer here is C, that is World Bank. Further, a question was asked with respect to tax to GDP ratio. It says a decreased tax to GDP ratio of a country indicates which of the following? Slowing economic growth rate. No, not necessarily. A decrease in tax to GDP ratio need not necessarily refers to a slowing economy. Second, less equitable distribution of national income. Yes, this is correct. So here B is a correct answer. Because in this case GDP of a country may be rising but tax collection by the government may be following. So a decrease in tax to GDP ratio need not necessarily refer a slowing economic growth rate. So here B is a correct answer. So we see different kinds of questions have been asked in the Indian economy section by the UPSC. So this news on public credit registry becomes important from our exam point of view. With this, let's move on to the next news. The next article appears on page number 9. The news reads, Educating people about climate change. Vulnerable populations should be made aware of the potential risk and how to cope with such climate change. Now this topic of climate change comes within GS paper 3 under conservation, environmental pollution and degradation and also environmental impact assessment. So this article effectively talks about bringing the concept of climate change in the mainstream policy decision making of the government. And in this, even the concept of climate change can be introduced specifically as a part of corporate social responsibility. So in this aspect, let's understand what the author in this article intends to talk about with respect to climate change. So before understanding about climate change, let's go through the basic understanding of climate as well as weather. It says that climate is the statistics of weather over long periods of time, whereas weather only describes the short-term conditions of these variables in a given region. It says that a climate is measured by assessing the patterns of variations in temperature, humidity, atmospheric pressure, wind, precipitation, atmospheric particle count, and other meteorological variables in a given region over longer periods of time. So all these when measured in a longer period of time, then such refers to climate, whereas weather only describe the short-term conditions of these variables in a given region. So in this aspect, let's go through the important points mentioned by the author in this article. The author says that climate change has the potential to change and disrupt lives. We can easily see this in the ongoing Kerala floods, as it has displaced millions from their households. It then says The WHO, that is the World Health Organization, has estimated that the climate change would cause roughly around 250,000 extra deaths every year from 2030 to 2050. And these deaths will be caused by different reasons such as malnutrition, diseases such as malaria, diarrhea, and even heat stress. And most of these deaths will be from low income developing countries, including India. So we see that India is quite vulnerable to these threats from climate change in terms of loss of lives. Further, the World Bank has also estimated that the climate change could cost India 2.8% of its GDP and diminish living standard for nearly half the country. So this again is an important data as it reflects the various impact of climate change on daily lives of citizens. So as per the author in such a scenario, we must inform and educate the people who are at risk with respect to such climate change. In this aspect, the Supreme Court directed the central government and all state governments to provide compulsory environment education in school and colleges. So by providing compulsory environment education in school and colleges, it makes the students aware about the various impact of climate change. This concept was also recreated in the case of MC Mehta versus Union of India, where many agencies, including private and public institutions and NGOs, have committed themselves to educate people to such effect of climate change. However, the author mentions there has been hardly any impact on climate change. The question remains that what could be done with respect to increasing awareness with respect to climate change. It says that the climate change should be specifically mentioned in the Companies Act 2013 and specifically with respect to corporate social responsibility activities or CSR activities undertaken by companies. It says that most of the plans and schemes are targeted for the vulnerable sections of the society. However, the government must focus on climate change and its impact as a policy initiative. So the author mentions that the government must now focus on climate change as a policy initiative. It then says that Schedule 7 of the Companies Act 2013 should be amended to include climate change as an area for investment under CSR activities, that is corporate social responsibilities, so that companies can make investment for the improvement of our environment. Similarly, film industry could consider ways to incorporate key aspects of climate change in films, as films act as a great medium of awareness, as outreach of films are wider. It says that even writers can introduce climate change in adult as well as children's literature, and gaming companies can develop game on such theme of climate change. So all these effectively will improve the awareness with respect to climate change or need to improve our current environment. It then says that educate and equip both rural and urban communities to build resilience against natural disasters and also to adapt to environmental changes and manage potential risk. Hence, education as well as making people equipped to build resilience against natural disasters become very critical with respect to managing such impact of climate change. In this aspect, it is important to know that the government of India has launched National CSR Data Portal, that is Corporate Social Responsibility Data Portal. And this data portal has been launched by the Ministry of Corporate Affairs. It says that a CSR initiative will push the country towards achieving sustainable development goals as well. And as we have already seen that CSR is governed through section 135 of the Companies Act 2013. As you can see in these particular pictures that it mentions figures with respect to CSR spent by 10 top states where Maharashtra topped the list. It also mentions sector-wise spending on CSR activities where you can see health and sanitation, slum development, rural development, clean Ganga fund, Swachh Bharat, encouraging sports. So all these have been mentioned under sector-wise investment of CSR funds. It then also mentions about CSR spent by government as well as other than government companies. So other than government companies contributes around 72%, whereas government companies have contributed around 28%. So this is a rough data as provided by the Ministry of Corporate Affairs on the website of National CSR Data Portal. So we see all this information with respect to CSR activities becomes very important with respect to our prelims examination as well. So this article on educating people about climate change becomes extremely important from an exam point of view. With this, we come to an end to discussion of today's newspaper. Please subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon for daily TNS updates. With this, let's move on to the question for the day.